The Game Schooler Podcast is a weekly audio show that educates new and experienced gamers about the awesomeness of tabletop gaming. In this week's episode, we'll cover Happy Home, our game of the week, discuss things we'd like non-gamers to know in the School of Gaming, and wrap it up by revealing our high five games you love but always lose. Welcome to the Game Schooler Podcast. I'm your host, Doug Kotecki, along with my co-host, the esteemed Dr. Michael McCabe. How's it going, Michael?
What's going on, Doug? How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Good.
Nothing of note. I
Okay.
don't think so. How about you?
Good. You look quizzical. Is everything okay?
No, I was just thinking if there's something else I'm forgetting, but
No,
I don't think I
checked.
am.
Our audio looks good. Our mic looks good. We look good. I'm
look good.
excited. I'm excited for the podcast and just banter about games. It's always one of the highlights of my week. I have a lot to talk about with you today. So
Yeah,
excited
I'm
for
trying to get
episode
new-
195.
I'm trying to get used to new glasses. Apparently, I've entered the age of old age, and I now need bifocals.
Bifocals.
So I got new glasses, and I feel like I'm half blind.
Those
so
are the
it's-
glasses within the glasses. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, the top half, the top upper middle allows me to see far, and the sides and lower half allow me to see close.
Oh, that's awesome. Technology, man. Sounds like a board game idea. Maybe we're following up on last week's episode of Untapped Themes.
Yeah, I was complaining to my dad. He's like, I actually have trifocals. I'm like, can't wait to get there.
You're making that up.
No, he does.
So will I get quadfocals someday? Is that a real thing?
Maybe. My dad might be the
Bifocals,
first one to get
trifocals.
them. He's got Coke bottles now,
sepfocals.
so we'll see what happens in the future.
No, that's great. Well, let's have a podcast about board games, shall we?
Sure. All right.
Awesome.
Anything to follow up on?
I do. How about yourself?
I do.
Take it.
So I've been mentioned that I was culling games last week, and
Did
I've
strangers show up at your house requesting copies?
yes, I'm trying to beat them away with a stick. Here, you get a llama, you get a. Anyway, I've been trying to track the games that I've played, previously owned, and not necessarily tracking my plays like you do, just kind of going through game by game and being like, oh, yes, I have played that game. And there are some interesting things that popped out. One of them is that I think I'm at the point where I've played almost 1,000 games.
That's cool.
Of that I've rated. So that's kind of interesting. And I don't know, it seems high to me, but then again, it also doesn't. So we'll see. The other thing,
I mean, it's 2 games a week for 10 years, so that's cool.
that seems pretty accurate. That's it.
Yeah.
That checks out.
Yep.
The other thing is, and this ties back into our School of Gaming last week. And so my process of going through this is I'm not a good tracker like Michael. So I basically am just going through the Board Game Geek games by rank, starting at 1. I think I'm now up to 8,000, and then just checking off which ones I've used to own, rating the ones that I've played, and just kind of and I'm doing that so my high fives are just not necessarily me looking at what's on my shelf type of thing, and being more aware of the games that I played. When we went to Gamehole Con and we were going through the games library, I was looking at the shelves. I'm like, oh, I've played that. Oh, yeah, I remember that one, or I used to have that one. Kind of got me on this. But the thing that has really popped out to me is relearning basically how hard it is to make an impact to the world of Board Game Geek. And what I mean by that is that there are games that were the hotness at Gen Con, and they're in the 8,000s, or they're in last year they that buzz, and it just shows how little that window is open to kind of make an impact And it goes back to kind of the way that we review games, which is it's so hard to break through that I'm not going to crap on a game in that initial burst and try and ruin that small window, knowing that the amount of work that's gone into a game and how small that window is to have an impact and rise up real high and sell a bunch of copies is such a narrow window that if I felt like I was slamming that shut on somebody, I would feel terrible about it.
Yeah, and to add in to that, and you've got me thinking about a lot of different things, but we cover so few games. It's not as if we are a daily podcast and we are covering, 50 games per month as some other shows do and some other networks and platforms do. And so our focus, and not to just take what you're saying and throw it across the entire podcast, but is we want to focus on what's awesome in the hobby and be a safe landing place for new and experienced gamers. And so we tend to not get a lot of pushback for not doing negative reviews just because we haven't from the start. But that is also certainly another topic that we could do a whole School of Gaming episode, probably a 3-part series on, is just negative reviews. What are they? How do they impact humans? Why are they good? I mean, sometimes in other shows, especially if I really know the reviewer, I like to listen to a negative review. It's just not how we want to spend our time on our show.
Yeah. And well, it's interesting. It was an interesting thing of if you've been following the hobby for as long as I have, and you've seen the number of games that have gone that were the rage. And then, maybe it was 5 years ago. I'm like, oh God, this was the hottest game around for like 3 months. And now it's ranked 7,500. How is that possible? And I think it is another indicator of like, you don't have to be caught up in the hotness all the time because those games just are around, right?
Yeah, I think you and I see Board Game Geek slightly differently, and not in a bad way, but I am really surprised when a game is in the top 200 or 300 sometimes. Where I'm like, how is that game 198?
Sure.
And then I'm equally surprised when a game is outside the top 10,000. So I feel like my range is broader, but I also haven't gone through an exercise and activity like you're doing right now. So I think that's it's just interesting to hear what you're doing, because we saw some of these games just a few months ago at Gen Con, and even if it was Gen Con 2023, they were
And I think part of it is the juxtaposition of, as I'm going through and I'm seeing games I recognize, not only are there a whole bunch of games that I don't recognize where you're just like, what is this? When did this come out? And coupled with that, with like, that's a sorry variant. How is that this high? Like, so you're seeing that whole spectrum of like, interesting, this version of Clue is higher, or this expansion from this game is higher than this other base. That's also part of it. It's not necessarily just that, that game should be higher or lower, or it's not often that I'm disagreeing necessarily with it. I'm just like, that's a pretty good game, and it's down here in obscurity. And then I just passed another game that you're like, what is that? How is that here? So it's I would encourage people to just kind of go through there, just start scrolling through the pages. It doesn't take that long, but just to see where things are in relation to each other is kind of a fascinating thing to see how that ranking works and how things end up where they are.
I would love to have someone from Board Game Geek on our show in an interview and just ask two questions. If they're on our show, we got to talk about what's awesome with game. But the second question is, please explain to us in granular detail this is something I've been very curious about and have talked to you about. How do the rankings work on Board Game Geek? What are all of the metrics, and have they changed over time? Because I don't know, and I have done some research into it, and I don't think I'm just being a lazy researcher. I haven't found here's our 17 criteria. Here's our 21 criteria that all fit into this algorithm. Like, what is it? Because I think some of it has to do with forum comments, number of forum comments in rules and in general. I think some of it has to do with overall rating, number of people that have rated it, but maybe it is just a lot simpler than that. Maybe it is just the rating and the number of people that have rated it. I don't know.
I think you'd have a better chance of getting the 11 secret spices from Colonel Sanders.
I don't think so. I don't think they're guarding it like that. We haven't asked. That it's an email, but yeah, it's interesting.
But they probably never reveal it because then people will spam it, whatever that reason is, too.
Yeah.
All right. What follow-up do you have, Michael?
Well, I just like your activity there, Doug. Before we move on, to me, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And it just shows how many different places and streams and avenues and branches on a tree and rabbit holes you could go down in this hobby.
Yeah.
Because here's a guy, who's 4 years into having a podcast, who suddenly realizes, like, I'm getting rid of a ton of games. I need to have a way to capture some of the games that I've played. And also because I just walked through a pretty awesome game library and I recognize a lot of those games. So thanks for taking us on that journey. That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. All the way back in episode 135, we had Mike DeLisio on the show. So this is not recent follow-up. This is like a year and a half ago follow-up.
And we sitting on it.
Yeah, we interviewed him as someone who was a former educator. He is a current podcaster and overall awesome person in the hobby. And Mike has been with the Dice Tower for the past several years and is someone that makes great videos for solo play. Among other things, that's where I really enjoy that's one of my go-to people for if there's a solo video out there, I'm going there. Well, you can add game designer to Mike's resume. Mike DeLisio and Dan Hughes have a Kickstarter that is out now. And at the time when this recording drops, it will be out for a few more days, and then there'll be late pledges available. And I'll tell you what, the theme looks awesome. It's called I Made You a Mixtape. And it's an I split you choose mechanism, which I love. And Doug, if you haven't backed it yet, this flavor text will get you to the Kickstarter page, I'm sure. All right. So I'm just going to read
already.
All right. I got to read this because this will make Doug chuckle. The coolest kid in your neighborhood, Kickstarter. The coolest kid in your neighborhood is heading off to university and is letting you and your school friends raid their music collection before they leave. In return, they've asked you to make them a mixtape for their road trip up to college. They've promised that the person who makes the best tape will win their Quantum Leap poster signed by Scott Bakula. When I saw that, all I could think was, oh, Doug's going to love that. Yep. So this is one that I did back because, one, it looks like an awesome game, especially for $25. And obviously, folks, this is not a call to action. You choose how you spend your funds. This is not an advertisement, but I'm very curious about this. It hits so many, themes and mechanism. And the Great Split was a game of the week for us. And there just aren't a ton of I Split You Choose games out there that seem to work, that have a theme that is, just screaming fun. And this one looks not like an I Split You Choose spreadsheet, but an I Split You Choose of fun. So just wanted to mention that out there. And if you're listening in the future, I Made You a Mixtape will be available to buy online after the campaign through the All Play web store. I got that off the Kickstarter page, but I did reach out to the publisher and heard back right away. Dan Hughes said late pledges will be available through Kickstarter. So you can go right to that Kickstarter page if you're listening in the near future. And usually how crowdfunding campaigns work, those pages will stay alive for a long time. So just one interesting little game out there. I know we had a crowdfunding segment a few weeks back where we talked about all the different ones that were coming out, and this was one that I just wanted to highlight. Follow-up, it's a distant follow-up, but follow-up nonetheless.
Awesome. That's cool. I'm interested in diving into that more and taking a look. Art looks cool. So
yeah, it does.
So
how do you like the name of that publishing company? Massive Asterisk.
Oh, it's good. It's good stuff.
Right.
Moving on to what's awesome. I played a game with my daughters this past weekend. And I don't know if you've ever had this scenario before, but I thought it was fun enough to highlight, which was I pulled off a game off the shelf, which my soon-to-be 7-year-old repeatedly told me that she had never played before, although I know she had. She didn't want to play it. She doesn't know how to play that game. And then I put it on the table. We started playing, and then we played it 4 more times, and her older sister joined in, and they didn't want to put the game away. And so it's one of those things where just having that, I don't know, guidance or, all right, hey, we're going to do this. And, I'm all about choice, and I love playing some of the games, and certainly my kids pick out the ones that they want to, and we judge through them and things like that. However, there is something special about kind of guiding that ship and then having it work out well.
Yeah. I think especially in that 7 to 8 to 9 to 10 range, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the game in question would be, I don't even know it's the kids' version of Mysterium, which you basically, there's like 5 sound or cards on the table, and then you use a tambourine while everybody closes their eyes to try and make the sound that you need them to guess. So it might be a hammer, it might be
Mysterium Park?
No. I think it might just be called Mysterium Kids, actually. But
okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your flow, man.
Yep, Mysterium Kids, Captain Echo's Treasure. So yeah, you're just using the tambourine to kind of, if it's a scratching thing, you kind of scratch. If it's a hammer, you might make a different sound, and it's just pretty funny to see a little 6-year-old, trying to suss out how they're going to present this, and everybody closes their eyes and you're listening, and there's little scratches and things going on, and it was a good time. And so
that's
like
awesome.
I said, anytime that you can kind of steer the ship and say, no, let's get together, let's do this, and it works out, it's a moment to celebrate, and certainly awesome.
Yeah, Doug, it's interesting that Mysterium Kids, let me get the full name, Mysterium Kids, Captain Echo's Treasure from 2022 is ranked 7,708 at the time of this recording, and the 80th children's game of overall. So now for the rest of the episode, I'm going to be looking, is this one that's in the 7,000s? Where did Doug rank this?
Yeah.
But also that something can be, in the top 10,000 or 7,700, and yet the 80th best children's game. It kind of, those always make me chuckle a little bit.
That's more shocking. All right, what do you have awesome in gaming?
I have so much, but I think I'm going to chop it down. I've been really getting into some of the games that I own and playing them solo and having a blast, but I think I'm just going to wrap that into a future segment in the next 2 or 3 shows as I wrap up a couple more games. And put a little 5-minute segment together. So for today, I think I'm ready to jump right into the spotlight.
All right. So this week we're going to be talking about Zuuli, published in 2022 by Unfringed. The designer is Chris Prescott. He is also the artist, 1 to 6 players, and it's about 15 minutes to play. You're going to be collecting enclosures, rescuing animals, installing upgrades over 3 years. That's basically 3 game rounds, not 3 physical years. And build
Which
the
would
highest,
be awesome.
build the highest scoring wildlife park you can in this fast-paced card game. Don't let the cutesy looks fool you into thinking this is going to be easy, though. Can you keep the lions away from the anteaters on the savannah plains? Are your sloths lonely or living a happy life on an open-air island? Your Zuuli adventure awaits.
Yeah, I really enjoy this game. As you mentioned, it was published in 2022, and it's been republished by Oink Games in 2024 called Moving Wild. So this is a game that is available to play as Zuuli with 2 U's on Board Game Arena if you're looking for it. And it's also available in North America from Board Game Bliss. But as you're trying to build a zoo, and as that happens over 3 rounds or a year, as you talked about, I really enjoy that puzzle of getting the 2 different types of animals to fit together. You have friendly animals, which are friendly, and they have a heart. The iconography is really good in this game. They have a heart and they can fit in an enclosure with other friendly animals. But if you have a fierce animal, and they are fierce, they can only go into an enclosure with an animal of the like name. So like a lion can only go with another lion. And then a lot of the cards have rules that are added as well. So although the game has that Sushi Go passing back and forth mechanism and it feels good, it feels fun, there's that extra challenge of the rules and how can I maximize the enclosures that I have. And there's 3 different types of enclosures that I think gives the game a feel and a vibe that fits in that area where I can play this with my 9-year-old and play all out. And yet she's just playing the game and building a zoo. And so we're playing 2 different types of games.
Yeah.
And there's one other little piece that I have to share with you that I know that you know because you played this, but if you can't place an animal at the end of the year, you're likely going to score negative points for whatever that animal's value is.
Yeah.
And so I can be doing, pivot tables in my head, thinking about where I'm going to place this and how I can maximize this card, while my 9-year-old's just playing the game and building an awesome zoo, and we can end up 2 points apart from each other.
Yeah.
Plays really fast. Once you get the rules down and just kind of the flow of it, you can get a game in 10 or 15 minutes. I also think it's just a wonderful game to teach and play with other folks.
Yeah, I think it's the interesting choice of drafting between, do I want to take, you get your hand of cards and there's some good animals that will score together well in a hand, and there may be some enclosures there. And so do you want to try and get the enclosures first or the animals, and trying to balance that, because you may take an animal and then find out there are no enclosures to put them in, or now I have the enclosure, but I don't have the animals that I thought I was going to put in there. It plays fast. I like the round-to-round scoring. As you kind of keep building your zoo out, you're going to be scoring more. Theoretically, you're going to be scoring more and more points each round.
Possibly.
I do have to say that I think that the Zuuli version looks better to me personally than the Moving Wild version.
Yeah, I haven't seen the Moving Wild version in the wild. I know it was at Gen Con this past year, and I didn't see it.
I'm just looking at the art on Board Game Geek, and it just doesn't appeal to me. I prefer the Zuuli artwork better. It seems a little bit too I don't know, the too streamlined in the Oink version. I think the original Zuuli version is a lot more fun and playful looking, and gets me into a better. It makes me feel like it's more of a game that I could play with a 9-year-old, where the Oink Games version feels like, oh, this is clearly for people that want to get after it.
And probably, I don't know where the entry is, folks, because the youngest gamer that I've played this with is 9. But I guessing if you play a lot of games and if you play Sushi Go, as long as a kiddo can read and the adult is able to pause what they're doing and help with a little bit of comprehension, it could probably get played as young as 7 or 8. But big caveat, I haven't played with anyone of that age with this game. There's 2 skills that I just want to touch on very quickly, Doug. I know we're just doing a spotlight here, but personal responsibility is awesome. I have had games that have gone completely off the rails in either direction. I've had games where I cannot get an enclosure. I've also had games where I've thought, oh, I got all the enclosures. This is a setup round for year 2 and year 3. I'm just going to fill them up with animals. And then I could not get the right animals to fit into one of the 3 enclosures that I need. So it's one of those where being too strategic has backfired.
Yeah.
And there's some personal responsibility with that. The other skill, I really like the computation that happens at the end of the year. Just, you can audibly listen, because what I'm not sure either one of us said after the first round or the second round, the first year or the second year, you can move and mix and match your animals again. And so there is an audible, well, if I put this here, those 2 lions are going to give me 6 points. But if I can get the lion over there with this card, that's going to give me 8. And you can hear that happening, that little bit
Yeah.
of computation in a way that at least my experience hasn't been where, well, actually, if you put those two together, you're going to get 12. It's not that type of paternal computation in board gaming. You can really hear the kiddos kind of making their way through as they put their zoo together.
Yeah, and thematically, they all kind of make sense when you do put them together.
Yeah.
So I think that helps as well. It's like, of course, I'm not going to put a lion in with a red panda. That's ridiculous. So I think that works out. So anything else on that one?
Awesome game. This was one that we got in a gift from a longtime listener, and the game now lives in my quiver. So thank you so much, Nicole. We don't always like to do those shout outs because we can get in a bind by thanking so many people, but this is one that it was the right game for me and my family, and I've really enjoyed playing it.
Yeah, good family fit. All right, so that is Zuuli from Unfringed in 2022. Before I move on to the game of the week, just want to remind everybody to sign up for the Discord by going to gameschooler.com/Discord. A great community that combines the ease of use of a text message with a forum and some great folks in there, and always awesome conversations happening. Highlight of my week every time I go in there and check out what people are talking about.
And a really good place for learning about the hobby. I'm not in there as often as you are, but man, I learned stuff in there. You learn about new games, learn about questions that people have. It's just such a positive place within the hobby.
Yeah, and so sign up for that. Spread the word about the podcast. Let other people know that you're enjoying what we're doing, and try and get some more listeners. We always want to expand the tent if we can, so spread the word. And if you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to us directly at email@gameschooler.com. Again, email@gameschooler.com. Now let's move on to the game of the week.
The game of the week. The game of the week is an in-depth look at a family-friendly game we think you should try if you get the chance. This week's game is Happy Home. Doug, give us the stats.
All right, published in 2024 by Alley Cat Games. The designers are Matthew Dunstan and Brett J. Gilbert, a design duo that we have tried a lot of their games, seem to pop up quite a bit. And the art is by Ekaterina Boguslavskaya. 2 to 5 players, 20 to 45 minutes. I think it's probably about 30, most of our playthroughs. The side of the box says 7+ Board Game Geek, and a rarity says 8+. I think 8's probably going to be a starting point for that. And it's going to be a family game. Move around the shop board to collect polyomino furniture tiles and place them into your house. Fulfill objectives and complete sets of furniture in each room to score points. Moving ahead on the shop board to collect that perfect piece of furniture might seem like a good idea, but be careful. Moving too far will give other players more turns to collect furniture. The player with the most points at the end of the game wins the title of the most creative home decorator. Let's get started and make our homes happy. In Happy Home, you are on what they call a shop board, but you basically move as far forward as you want and then take the polyomino tile that is in that space, and then whoever is furthest behind will then take the next turn, and so on. And you keep filling up your house. Your house is going to have 4 different rooms in it that you are trying to fill up. You have a kitchen, a bathroom, a bedroom, and a living room.
Well, you do. I might just have a living room and bedroom.
Depending on how the furniture comes out, maybe one of yours looks like a posh, opulent living room, or you might have a college dorm room style bedroom that's got stuff on cinder blocks and only one thing in there. There are the way that the tiles are laid out is that the floor on the tiles tells you what room it goes in, which is kind of part of a bigger thing about this game that I think works really well, which is the iconography and the way that everything fits together works really well.
It's busy. It's very busy if you just look on Board Game Geek, but on the table, our impression is it's clean. As anyone who's listened for more than an episode knows, that this would be a game for me where color blindness could certainly be an issue, and I didn't think it was. I don't know about how other people at the table felt, but the iconography is really, really clean.
So at the end of the game, you're going to get points for furniture sets. So each room has 3 different types of furniture that you can put in it. So, for example, a bathroom is going to have a sink, a tub, and a toilet. Make up the 3 unique ones. The kitchen, I think, has a counter, table, and a sink, maybe, or a stove, oven, refrigerator type thing. The bedroom is going to have a bed, some sort of dresser, and a table, like a side table, I believe. So various things like that. So if you can get all 3 unique items in your room, you're going to score more points for that. Each piece of furniture also has a color. And so you're trying to get the colors spread into every room. So if I have a blue piece of furniture in every room, I'm going to get 5 points. If I can get blue furniture in 3 out of the 4 rooms, I'll get 2 points. So you're trying to do that. There are potted plants, which are worth 1 point when you put them in there, and then they get 1 point for every adjacent floor space that is empty. So you're trying to kind of put them by themselves, not tuck them away anywhere. And then each room has 2 to 3 scratches on it. If those are exposed at the end of the game, you're going to lose a point for each one of those. Whoever drops out first of the game is going to get the highest value welcome mat. So there's some points there. And there are 4 different scoring objective cards that you can play with each game to kind of make that difference. So there's one that is rewarding you for putting things in corners, one's for having a lot of empty space in the middle of the room, things like that. And the only other unique type of tile that you can grab is a rug or a carpet, and those are awesome because they count for 2 colors.
Yep.
So it's a great way to add color to a room and kind of get those extra points for that.
They cover 2 placements, and then you're going to get 2 colors towards your set collection. So,
yeah, I think here's what I want to point out about this game that I really want to highlight. Of course, it's fun. I enjoyed playing it. The thing that I really liked about this game is twofold. One is I thought, so the way that you put out this furniture, they're represented by cards around the board, around that shop board. And then once you take that card, you then find the polyomino piece or the piece of furniture that goes with it, put that piece into your room, and then the card stays in front of you.
So
and
you
I
have
had
cards that you're taking, and then you turn in the card to get a tile. You place that tile onto your board.
Yep. And then you keep those cards in front of you, which help track the colors and the icons of what items are in your rooms. I was fearful that this was going to feel really fiddly and clunky and slow the game down, and I'm surprised that it doesn't. I still don't know exactly why it doesn't, but it seems to be the perfect amount of time of hunting for that tile, placing it, and then it's your turn again, it seems like.
Yeah,
it moves really fast.
Sorry to jump in there, but I think there are 2 things that are working with it. One, you've played a lot of games. And so all those pieces, you're able to read it in rule book and have an organized table and make it work. But I think that's a very little part of why it works. It works because you have 2 designers who have designed a lot of different games.
Yeah.
And it just feels like it was the right amount of development and design meeting at the table where the process is actually kind of fun. So I want to jump in and highlight the one thing that I really like, because for me, when this is right in a game, I tend to upgrade a game by 1 or 2 points, and when it doesn't work for me, I really mark it down. And that's a mechanism of time track or turn order that's in Takedo, First in Flight, Merchant's Cove. So the person who is furthest back, that's the person to take their next turn. And in some games, that mechanism, I feel like I don't actually have a choice. Like I feel like, well, there's only one or two places I can actually slide into. But for whatever reason, with Happy Home and how they have designed the time track, they don't call it a marketplace. What do they call it? You read the
shop
term.
board.
The shop board. Yeah, the shop board. On my turn, I feel like I have 2 or 3 options, and that board is changing on every person's turn. So in terms of what I need to look at and my level of engagement, I don't ever quite hit overwhelm. And so all those pieces, when you talked about actually turning in a card and getting a tile and placing it, there's that actual puzzle of what's going on in my house and what's going on in your house. What sets am I trying to collect? When are those colors and pieces going to actually come out? It worked well. It really did. And this is one that we played a bunch. We played a bunch over a few weeks of time and came back to it with different people. And I don't think we had a bad game of it.
No, and I think one of the things that they did really well, which is depending on the number of players, and I think in all player counts, you're going to be removing some cards from the game before you start.
There's a ton of randomness.
It really eliminates the analysis paralysis that could be in a game like this, because you don't really know if that sink, if that yellow sink that you're looking for is going to come out in the game. You just don't know. So you kind of have to just keep moving and take your turn, which some people, might not like that because you don't have perfect information and it's not entirely strategic. There's points where you're like, okay, I think this will work. And, at the end of the game, you're staring at 5 toilets in a row and it's like, I don't need a toilet. And so
I needed that toilet.
Yeah, I mean that.
And then Doug screaming, I needed that couch. Well, that third couch fit nicely right here.
Perfectly in there. So it's like that fact that there is that AP, that analysis paralysis is minimized and the game keeps moving, that it feels like by the time it's my turn again, I'm ready for it to be my turn again. And because in this game, it's one of those where it's like you can zoom far ahead, but it's not in your best interest. You might leave a space of 1 or 2 depending on what you need. And it isn't until the late game that you kind of start looking around of like, yeah, Michael's not going to be able to fit that couch in his living room, so that's going to be there for me. Or I know he doesn't need this, or he is going to want that, and I want that, so maybe I'll take that. So it opens up a little bit at the end, but it just does a good job of moving, which I think is important in a game like this.
What I like about the game, that endpoint, is some of the tiles that are not as valuable early on are extremely valuable towards the end of the game. Suddenly, a carpet and a potted plant, which I'm not going to take that on my first or second turn. I'm going to fill in this room. But you get those 1s and 2s that are extremely valuable at the end of the game, especially when you're playing with people who know the rules and have gotten past that first play. Yeah. So plays well early, middle, and late. Game just really seemed to work for us.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's really cool about this one is if you take ownership of the board and say, this is my house, and you do a little bit of role playing of like, I'm filling in this furniture and I'm doing that, this game really becomes fun and shines where you're like, why am I putting a second couch in here? And it's like, as we were playing, almost every time we played, there's a little story that's being created of like, well, this isn't my living room, this is my couch room. Or, no, I have 12 TVs in this room because why not? I need to watch the game.
I'm glad you brought that up because we do have 2 different people on the show. That's Doug's version of the game. My version of the game, I'm just trying to stack sets and make sure that I get the maximize my sets and collection.
You're missing out.
Well, maybe we'll need to play it again. But I did want to highlight that if you have somebody in your gaming life that is extremely drawn to theme, and if you've played Dream Home or some of the other games that we've talked about where you're kind of designing and building out a space, I think at one point I talked about floor plan, this Happy Home, you will hear somebody just kind of get bubbly and have that fun chatter, and that's always what you want in games, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and we talked about it earlier, but the iconography and the player board scoring, everything is really functional in this game that works out well. The only part that I would nitpick is that the design objectives, those 4 cards, could be explained a little bit better in the rule book. And the rule book is kind of a funky layout. It's this like big fold out page that you flip over, and
almost like if you were hanging a calendar on your wall.
Yeah,
but I think some of that is so that it fits in a very small footprint of a box.
Yeah, I mean, they could choose any way that they wanted to do that. But like I said, the only complaint I really have is the objectives. It seems like they missed the mark where the scoring explanations, with how good they did the iconography on the rest of the game and explaining the scoring, they have these cards in there, and the scoring cards don't do enough. You have to look in the rule book to kind of get clarification, and even then it's like, how exactly is that working? But overall, a fantastic game. I think it's probably going to be a great family game night. I don't know if this is going to be one that you're going to be playing in the classroom.
And it's too many pieces for classroom and even community.
Yeah, and I think and it would certainly be a great palate cleanser for a heavier game group. What kind of skills do you want to highlight in this one, Michael?
I was just going to ask you that. I think anytime there's that time track mechanism, you have some direct personal agency there, and it's not I'm going down this track and this pathway to get these goals. It's almost each loop around I get to make choices, and so decision making.
Yep.
And although it's a core skill and it's in every game, decision making is a game that allows players to make decisions based on currently or previously available information. So there's one thing that you mentioned earlier in the segment, and that's during setup, especially in a 2-player game, but also in a 3-player game, a bunch of tiles are taken out. You don't have perfect information. You don't know what's coming up. But as soon as you hit the midpoint of the game, and as soon as you've played just one game, there's a sense of, this is going to end pretty quickly. I might have 5 or 6 more turns left. And so I love that midpoint decision, too, of making a choice of, which room am I going to try to optimize, and how do I at least get one pink toilet in so that I get all 4? So there's multiple decision points that happen throughout the game.
Well, that's the decision I love in this game is you get to a point where you're saying, all right, I already have a green thing in that room, but it's a different furniture type. So then do I wait for that furniture type to come up into a color that I need in the room, or do I just bite the bullet? Or, you get towards the end of the game, and it's like that's why you end up with 2 sofas, because it's like, well, I can add this pink sofa to the room, and that's going to help me score. But it's like, I don't need another sofa. And then sometimes you make that decision, and then you know what? The next card that comes out, you're like, okay, great. That was the pink end table I needed to put in the room is right there. And I kind of like that about the game, where it's like, oh, I wish this sofa had come out sooner, type of thing. Certainly any game that's got polyominoes is going to have spatial perception in it, a game that strengthens a player's understanding of spatial relationships with the objects in their environment and themselves. And this one even more so, because you're arranging furniture in a room, and you're trying to think, okay, how can I put this, especially if you got a potted plant in there, it's like, I don't want to encroach on that, want to fill up against the wall. You're trying to meet a whole bunch of kind of different objectives. And that bleeds into the tactical thinking, which is happening on, you got about 1 to 4 options that you can feasibly take in your next move, and it's constantly changing. And if the person, takes the one that you thought that might be available, all right, I got to pivot, I got to move on to something else. So you're kind of always changing, and it keeps it fresh. But because you don't have to reanalyze the whole board, because you're not going to jump that far ahead, it makes it really manageable.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the other thing that when you talk about pivoting, you're not able to change your tile. Once you place that tile down in a room, it's set there. And I'm not sure that the furniture's heavy. I'm not sure if we mentioned that. I wish they had some calyxes in there so you could just get them and draft them. But 2 other skills that I just want to point out. You talked about tactical thinking, but I see strategic thinking, a game that encourages players to develop a process or long-term strategy for accomplishing a goal in a very different way in Happy Home than we've ever talked about. And that's in Compartmentalize It. No, that room's done. So it's almost like a backwards. We usually talk about strategic thinking as looking forward, but it's that sense of bringing strategic thinking and observation together of, nope, I've got what I can in that room. I need to move on and look at a different part of my house. And I noticed that as I played the game more, it wasn't just collecting sets. It actually was optimizing a room and realizing that not every room is going to be perfect. There will be some holes, but if I can cover up that scratch and if I can go out and get a rug, and so being somewhat strategic fairly early on in the game because the game plays so fast and you have so few turns.
Yeah, the last one I have is one that a lot of times when you get polyomino games, they kind of close in on themselves. And this one's no different in the way that your rooms are filling up. However, this game has observation that helps alleviate some of that. And it doesn't happen until the end of the game when, the first couple of turns and people are like, I don't care what Michael's putting in his house. It doesn't matter. But then towards the end of the game, when the spaces in your house are harder to fill, it becomes easier to look around at everybody else's rooms to see what they might be taking.
Well, and that's when skipping ahead makes sense too.
Yeah,
right?
Because he was like, well, he can't take any of these, so I'm going to jump four pieces of furniture ahead and take this, and it's going to work for me. So it's kind of a juxtaposition of kind of closing down, but also freeing up and becoming a little bit more open because you can go like, yeah, I don't need that. I can't fit that. I don't want that. You can make those decisions faster, but it does allow you to look around the table and observe what other people are doing. An observation we define as a game that rewards careful watching of details and behaviors in order to understand or arrive at a judgment, which I think this one works out in a different way. Yeah. Any other skills for you, Michael?
No, I mentioned the three that I brought.
All right, well, that is going to be our game of the week. Just an awesome tile placement game that moves fast and has a cool theme. So check that one out. That is Happy Homes from Alley Cat Games.
The School of Gaming. In the School of Gaming, we discuss concepts, keywords, etiquette, and helpful ideas in the world of gaming. This week, we discuss things you'd like non-gamers to know. Doug, give us or lead us into this segment.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one because I was thinking about, and we'll get into this in a future School of Gaming as well, but the idea of if you could tell a non-gamer something, what would you tell them? And whether that's to get them to the table or just kind of misconceptions. And I think this comes from a little bit from my personal experience and from some of the stories I've heard on Discord of trying to get other people to play games.
The Game Schooler Podcast Discord.
Yes. Thank you for branding
A lot
that.
of Discord channels out there, Doug. Just clarifying.
So, for example, I just made a list of different things, and like one of them is I don't care if you're bad at games. I don't care whether you win or lose. No one here cares at the table whether that is. There's nothing here to be intimidated about. And I think one of the big things is the idea of a lot of times when somebody asks you to play a game, it's because they want to spend time with you, not because the game is so good or important. And I think about this with some of my family members where I'll ask them to play games, and it's like, I don't like playing games. It's like, why? And I know that people get intimidated of like, oh, well, you have a whole bunch of games, so you're going to destroy me. I'm embarrassed. You know more about games.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Yeah. And it's like one of those things, like, just because I have a lot of games doesn't mean I'm good at all of them, or that, Michael, it's not as. I just get frustrated sometimes when I hear that thing of I don't, I'm not going to win. I'm not good. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm embarrassed, or that insecurity that comes out that keeps people from participating. And sometimes I just want to shake people and say it's not about the game.
Define a non-gamer.
I think it's somebody that is certainly is not engaged in the hobby, so they have no idea what new games are out. They may play games at home, but it's usually stuff that they've gotten from somebody else or they grew up with, but they're not actively seeking out games at Target or Walmart, is kind of where I classify that. How about you?
I don't have a classification. That's why I was asking you to do it. I think it can be such a broad category. At the same time, I think that there's also people who are gamers at certain times of their life and then are non-gamers in other times of their life. I do think that because it's a hobby that involves putting physical products out on a table and learning how they work and then communicating that with other humans, it's one where people jump in and out of to a very large degree. And then there's folks like you and me that jump into it and devote a lot of our free time and energy to it. So I just wonder how broad that.
I think if you're following the hobby, like if you've got family members that come to a holiday or a birthday party, and every time after the main festivities are done, they sit down and everybody plays categories or Taboo. It's like they play games, but they're not a gamer. Like, to me, that's kind of the qualifier of, it's like you can play games and still not be a gamer, in my opinion. I feel like it's that active pursuing of the hobby and trying to learn more, play more, that you're actively seeking it out, not just that you will play games.
Yeah. I think for me, the one thing that I would like all non-gamers to know is that if you get a game, somebody else will teach it for you. And in 2024, soon to be 2025, that's different than a quarter century ago. Right now, most of the games that people would pick off of the shelf at any store have a great video tutorial online on YouTube, and somebody will walk you through how that game works and teach you how to play it. Now, it's not the same as if they're sitting there in front of you, but where we are in modern life, people learn how to do things off of videos on the internet. Yeah. And I think that's just the one thing to kind of lower the barrier for entry, that if you're looking for a game, but you don't want to open up the rule book and do all of that work, there's other methods to learn that game.
Well, and I think, some of the things are, you don't have to have a bookcase of games to play games. You can still play games if you don't have a collection. I understand that some people may have had bad gaming experience in the past. It's okay to try another game. Like, these are things that, to me, it's more of an uplifting thing of like, no, this game isn't too complicated for you. And I think as being a good steward of the hobby, which we'll talk about in a future gaming school of gaming thing, so I don't want to dive too far into it, but it's like that burden is on me as the person introducing the game to not pull something out that is out of the realm of their ability at the time. You're just creating more problems than you're helping. It's like, no, I asked you to play this game because I think you can handle it, and you can handle it. And maybe this is something that's too personal to me, where I feel like I've gotten some of that resistance from, whether it's, like I said, family members or people where it's like, let's just give it a try. Like,
Yeah.
it's not, you're not going to hurt my feelings if you don't like the game. I hope we have fun. I'm not going to push you into the deep end and say, all right, we're going to play a 4-hour nail-biting game, and it's going to be cutthroat, as all get out and things like that. So it's...
Yeah, that's next week when you come back after having so much fun this first time. I right?
Yeah, it's I guess the ultimate message of what sums up a lot of my thoughts is like, it's not as intimidating and as scary as you think, and that the people in the hobby are very welcoming and open and want to share their excitement. Now, do some people go overboard with their excitement? Of course they do.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. But I think it's, again, to me it comes down to it's not necessarily about the game. That's just when we're talking to Dr. Knizia, it's like that is the thing that's bringing people together. But it's not about who won or who lost. It's about that shared experience and having a good time together that I wish people would know more about or know that more, that the game is the conduit.
Yeah, and I think, so I had 3 things coming into this segment that I would like, quote unquote, non-gamers to know. And I mentioned one earlier, that you can learn a game just like you learn anything else in this day and age, that there's multiple ways to actually learn the game. Because I think learning the game can be a big barrier.
Sure.
If you have 4 people who are like, hey, what are we going to do this week? Let's get a game. And as foreign as that sounds, in our local Target, the board games are right next to where the dolls are. So over the last 5+ years of my life, I've been standing while my kids are browsing the doll section in our generation and whatever else Target dolls have. I will look and see like what games are people getting. I'm basically doing research for the podcast. And very recently, over the last, I'd say 12 to 18 months, there's a lot of people who are in their late teens to early 20s that are grabbing some of those murder mystery type games. Certainly not one that we've ever talked about on the podcast, but they are truly getting the game, and I will actively eavesdrop folks. Like, okay, what are you going to do? They heard about it, saw it on social media, heard somebody else do it. They're going in, sharing, throwing down $5-6 each to get that game to go home and play it. And I thought, that's interesting. Not somebody that I would define as a gamer, but somebody who walked over here intentionally to get this type of game because they knew somebody who'd played it. And that takes me to my second thing that I would love non-gamers to know. Games are fun. Third one is games make memories. And I think that's the one thing that I really want to pass on to the non-gamers. You and I have a game group, and we get together weekly and we play with regular people. But even within those experiences, there are still memories that are made based on what's happening. And I want people to know that when you take learning and fun and memories, you really do have a unique hobby. And the last thing that I just want to briefly add is people have been very kind to me. And I think the hobby is overtly kind to try to get more people in it all the time.
Yeah. So let us know in the Discord what you guys think. What are some notes or tips that you'd like non-gamers or folks that aren't playing games regularly to know? You just wish they knew. We'd love to hear about those. So let's move on to the high five. If you're anything like us, you're constantly on the hunt for new games to check out. This week, Michael and I are going to be talking about games that we love, but we always lose, which is a unique thing because a lot of times if you win a game, you tend to like it. Even if it's just beginner's luck, and if you get completely destroyed, sometimes that can ruin your interpretation or
Was this
reception.
a hard list for you to put together, Doug, because you just win every game you play?
Pretty much. I had to go for bottom of the barrel type of thing. No,
7,000s.
I definitely have my own list of games that I am not good at. And it also appeared to be, my number one was, I knew right away what it was going to be. The other ones are also not necessarily games that it's more of like I love playing them even if I do lose, which isn't necessarily like I'm always losing these, but it's like I don't care if I lose. I'm still going to have fun playing this game. Is that kind of how you approach this one?
No.
Or are these games you're terrible at?
No, I went cold hard facts and analytics. I looked up, and this one took me a little bit of time to put together because there are games where I thought, oh yeah, I'm terrible at that one, and then I look it up. Actually, my lifetime record is 3-2, and those 2 losses are by a combined total of 6 points. So it's not that I'm terrible; it's just that I really remember the losses.
Yeah.
And so I went fairly analytical. Looked up the log plays, and there were some that definitely stood out more clearly than others.
Yeah.
I think I'll get started. The first one was a game of the week back for us in episode 129. Folks, it is actually our number 1 family game of all time, and that is Green Team Wins.
That's a good one.
And I think I very rarely win this one because I just want people to have fun. This is a game that when I'm not playing it with my friend Doug, I'm usually the one teaching it, getting it set up and started, and more of a game manager, a facilitator, and less of a player. And at the same time, I know I've also had some family games of this where I've gotten destroyed. So number 5 for me, I don't think I've ever had a bad time playing it, and I've certainly had a lot of losses playing it. Green Team Wins.
That's a good choice. I think I fall in the same boat as you, but mine is because I usually, instead of looking around and being strategic of what I think other people are going to pick, I have to be true to myself always. And I will put down exactly how I feel about a multiple choice question, even if I know it's not in the majority opinion of what everybody else is going to say.
See, I thought you would do that, so that's why I then put down the choice that I thought that you would put, but then I tricked myself. So that we both end up losers.
Well, that fits in nicely to my number 5, which is Sheriff of Nottingham. We talked about this in episode 121. Came out in 2014 by Sergio Halaban and Andre Zatz from Simon. And this is a game where you're trying to smuggle goods in. I'm not a good liar. I don't like to lie. I try and do it. I always feel like I'm second guessing. I'm the guy that pops open all of the cases, and they all have no contraband in there, and I'm paying fines. I'm just not very good at this game.
I seem to do really well in that game, actually,
Doug.
That's
shocking.
Now that you mention it, that one didn't even come to mind.
There's scrolled past that. I dominate.
Doug, why is this envelope? Are your palms sweaty right now? Why is this
just take
envelope
it? No, it's fine. Don't worry
wet?
about it. So that's my number 5, Sheriff of Nottingham. The experience is too fun to get caught up in whether I'm winning or losing.
Great segues, almost like we mapped this out together, because this next one I was shocked that I'm so terrible at it. In my head, I'm much better at it than what I thought. This was a game of the week back in episode 126, and that is Fire Tower 2019 game Fight Fire with Fire, designed by Gwen Rule and Sam Bryant. And in Fire Tower, you have a tower that you're defending and you don't want anyone else to burn it down. And I don't know if I've ever actually won it. My first few log plays don't include any victors on it, so maybe I did, but I don't recall ever winning this game. This is one that I have in my collection that I know I'm bad at it, but again, similar with Green Team Wins, I just want everybody to have a good time, and it's such a unique game where how the fire moves out across the board. I still feel like I'm having really cool turns, and I get hyper competitive in it, so that brings the fire back towards my tower, and that brings people ganging up on me. And you know what? I don't mind it. I like it. So that's my number 4 is Fire Tower. Game right. I'd really like to play again, and I've kept in my collection because it's just a fantastic little game, but it's been almost a year since I played it last.
I'm surprised you haven't. That seems like a game that would just dominate in your family. Because you guys get after it.
We do. We do.
My number 4 is from episode 155, and that is The Lost Ruins of Arnak. published in 2020, Czech Games Edition, designers Min and Elwin. I don't know if I've ever won this game. Maybe one time, and it may have been a teaching game, but I usually find myself on the wrong end of a strategy, and I have a certain way that I like to play. I like doing combos. I like everything I'm doing in this game. And I have fun along the way, but it just does not matter whether I'm winning or losing. And I usually find out at the end, like, no, you lost. But I'm okay with it because I had a good time. I had a good time the entire time I was playing. It's like I felt like I was doing cool stuff. Apparently not cool enough stuff, but it always makes the experience rewarding for me. And it's one of those where it's so strange that there are some games that come so natural to you where you're just like, oh yeah, like I got this thing figured out.
I know how to play this.
Lost Ruins of Arnak is not that for me. So that is my number 4.
Interesting. I did not see that coming. That was episode 155, Game of the Week. So far, every single one of our games have been Games of the Week until now. This will be a future Game of the Week. And this game is KNARR, K-N-A-R-R 2023. The initial game that I played, folks, at Lucas Oil Stadium at Gen Con 2024 was a blast. And I lost the tiebreaker, 47-47 to Doug. And I got to tell you, I don't know if I'll ever play another better game. I picked up the rules on it. I was dominating. I had combos. I could see his little passive income with his reputation, but I was like, I'm going to race towards the end. And I don't think I've won a game. I have like 4 games going on Board Game Arena right now. Some of them with listeners of the Game Schooler podcast. At least one of those games is finished second in the last game. So maybe by the time of this recording, I'll have won my first game. But I love it. And I know it's going to be a Game of the Week in a few episodes, so this is a little bit of a teaser. I'm not going to say a whole lot about it. It's designed by Thomas DuPont, published by Bombix and Pandasaurus most recently. But I just absolutely love the gameplay, and I am playing with sharks who destroy me.
Good choice. Good choice. I'm going to jump back onto the Games of the Week bandwagon. And this one comes from episode 118. And that is Challengers, published in 2022. Johan Krenner and Marcus Slatswitschek from Z-Man Games. Challengers is a game where you're loosely building a deck and then flipping the cards over war style to try and capture a flag. It goes back and forth, and it's like I have fun seeing how it plays out and watching all of the matches and the tournament that's going on. And trying to win the competitions and get enough points to get into the championship. And my cards don't roll out my way. It's like I feel like I play this game and everybody's like, oh, Doug, that deck is really good. And then it's like, oh, those cards did not come out in the order that they should have. You know, you're just like, oh, if this, oh, man, I just get defeated. And again, every time I feel like it's like, no, those are pretty good cards. Like this, like, did I do something wrong here? Look at my deck. Did this? No, those look great. Like, yeah, it was 1 card difference. If that other card would have come out, I would have completely won. You know, that type of thing. But the excitement and energy around the rest of the game is so strong that I don't care. And the characters that are in the game are fun as you're battling back and forth. So that's my number 3, Challengers.
Awesome. Great game. Great game. Hard to believe that 100, not 100, but that was all the way back in 118.
Yeah.
Time really flies. This one, I thought we did a Game of the Week, but we didn't. I think it just was worked into a certain 2-player segment a while back, and that's Jaipur from 2009. Sebastian Pochon is the designer, also same designer as Skyrise, and a handful of other games have come up recently for us. He was a co-designer on Champions. And Jaipur is a 2-player only game that plays in 30 minutes. Phenomenal game with just a great little marketplace. And I tend to get pulled in on going for the camels, folks, because it gives you a 5-point bonus. Recall that. And I tend to get a little obsessive on going for the camels as if those 5 points are going to help me win the game. And I don't recall ever winning the game. And according to my log plays on Board Game Geek, I have never won the game. And I just, showed my wife this game for got it up, got it running, and she absolutely destroyed me. And I was not taking it easy on her. And I thought, well, looks like I will not be winning this game against you. But boy, I love it. I just love what's happening in the game. I love the turn structure, how you're trading and selling goods, and I love how those piles of goods run out, and just that tension from the very first all the way to the end. Right now it's ranked 190 overall on Board Game Geek and 36 overall on Family, and I'm glad to see that a game that's 15 years old is still ranked that highly, because boy, I've enjoyed it, and I still searching for my first W on that one.
Good pick. So my number 2 might have a little bit of recency bias, but it is a game that I definitely love, and it is a game that I do not win often, but the journey is 100% worth it, and that's Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition.
It's my number 1.
Interesting. So 2016 Nikki Valens and Fantasy Flight Games. This is a cooperative game which you are working through the Lovecraft story. It is app-driven, and it is a fun ride to go through with fairly simple gameplay mechanisms that guide you through it. And for sure, the last 2 games of this, I have lost. We have lost as a cooperative adventure.
We were destroyed.
It came down to the wire. And
what I said is also accurate. We lost on our last turn.
Physically,
each of
we
the
were
last
destroyed.
2 games. In a 3-hour game, when it comes down to the last turn, and because the person that we're dragging along who had madness, and we've got to stumble and wonder if they're on our side or not on our side, that is my definition of being destroyed. Back to you for your number 2, Doug.
Yes. No. Go ahead. I'd like to. I want to hear what your thoughts are on this.
Well, I think I just gave them all to you. I love going on the journey. I love the investment of time. I really enjoy taking 2.5 to 3 hours. The narrative, the flow of the game works really well with being able to collect certain items and knowing when to optimize items. I love. I enjoy when games allow characters to make those decisions. Oftentimes, that will happen in a competitive game in a way that is a ton of fun. But in Mansions of Madness, it actually happens in a cooperative game where I feel like I'm optimizing this to make the best decision for the group. And I think that there's some alpha gaming is minimized because of all the different options that I have with my character. Like, I feel like I am that character. And so the last game that we played very recently, I just chose one that was not my type of character. We were playing the Cycle of Eternity, and I took a psychologist, a female psychologist. So I'm like, I'm going to dive into this character right here. Not something I would typically do in a role-playing game. Oftentimes, I'm going to, if there was a male scholar, I'll go ahead and take that one, like the person that I would associate with. But being able to jump into that universe, I really felt like I was invested. And how can I discover these certain parts of the board with the team? So, and we lost. Spoiler: we did not win. Not this year, and not last Halloween.
We got swallowed
140 minutes. Bye bye.
Into the void. There's a element of the storytelling mixed with the puzzles and the searching and uncovering the story, because you start the game, you have no idea what the win condition is or what you're trying to do. You just have some clues on the board that you need to try and uncover. And I think the testament to that is that you can play this game for an hour or 2 or 3, come within maybe 2 or 3 turns of winning the game, and lose and be like, that was 100% worth it.
Yep.
Where a lot of times, if you lost in that scenario, you'd be like, I got to flip the table. I can't believe I just wasted my time on that. And some of the more mechanical cooperative games probably have that type of feeling. But because there's a story and characters, and some of you are going insane, some of you are hobbled with injuries, and things are happening to you, it's like, well, I guess I won't be... I've got to drop all my stuff or whatever it is. I think those story elements are what make it worthwhile regardless of whether you win or lose.
or the fire's outbreaking and
Yes.
it's going to spread, and how are we going to mitigate that? And I also like that the app tracks a lot of that information for you as well in the second edition. So
Yeah.
no, that was my number one. Games I'm terrible at, but I'll sit down and I'll play that anytime. Similar with my father's work.
Yeah.
Those app driven, longer, 2 to 3 hour adventure type games. So
My number one is Quacks of Quedlinburg. We talked about this in episode 49.
you're bad at that game?
What's that?
You're bad at that game?
I
Sorry.
am terrible at that game.
Really?
Yes, I don't think I've ever won it. It is. If it was any longer, I might get to the point where I dislike the game. But it plays fast enough, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. That's another one where I'm plunking along, and I feel like I'm doing okay, and then it's like, yep, not winning this one. Just how it happens. That last turn never seems to work out for me well. This one came out in 2018, designer Wolfgang Warsch and publisher CMYK. So it's a game that I've played a lot. I have the deluxe components. I enjoy playing this game. Apparently not very good at it. Blind drawing out of a bag, not my thing, apparently. So that's my number one, Quacks of Quedlinburg. Any honorable mentions for you, Michael?
Yes, I do, and I have a reaction to your list. As soon as you said the name of the game, like part of my brain went off like, "Hey, I'm actually pretty good at that one." Like Sheriff of Nottingham. It's like I think I'm plus on the wins on that one. Hey, I think so. It's just interesting to see that. Yes, my honorable mention, which your daughter actually trounced me in, and I still enjoyed the game, and I've lost repeated on Board Game Geek, and I still enjoy the game, and that's Dog Park, which was the game of the week back in episode 124. I don't think I've ever won it, and I feel like, I'm pretty good at it. I could play it. I could teach it. I could get it up and running, and whoever I'm playing it with is going to beat me. And then Castles of Burgundy. I am perpetually second in that game. If we're playing 2-player, I'm second. If we're playing 4 players, I'm second. So those are my two. And you know what? I love that game. I do. I love the decisions that happen. I love my duchy fills up and things start to happen in it. But man, I'm pretty much guaranteed runner up in that one. You?
Yeah, I've got 2 on my list. One of them we talked about in episode 167. That's Pirates Cove. My boat is going to get obliterated most times that I play that game. I am for sure going to pick the exact location that you're going to go to, and my boat will be brutalized in that ensuing attack. Just never seems to work out for me, but I do like that game. And the other one is Catacombs, which is a dexterity game, kind of a one versus many dexterity game. And I'm not great at flicking discs across the table, and so it doesn't work out, but I sure do have a blast while I'm playing it, and going through all the different dungeons and trying to shoot my fireballs off and watching them bounce off things that they shouldn't bounce off of is a good time regardless of whether I'm winning or not. So that is Catacombs. So that is going to do it for us this week. Want to remind everybody to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on X at GameSchoolerU. Again, join our Discord, gameschooler.com/Discord. Next week, we're going to be talking about iHeartManities. We're going to be talking about importing a game. And we're going to, almost the exact opposite of this list, we're going to be talking about our wheelhouse games. Games that are just naturally fit into our gaming habits. So,
you want to send me your high five list, Doug? I think a lot of those will carry over.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you so much for spending the last hour or so with us. We truly appreciate it.
Now get out there and keep gaming.